Hyunwoo stepped off the transport shuttle and into the massive space station called Nexus Prime. The walls around him were made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow with its own light. He had never seen anything like it before. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in space around a planet that looked blue and green from the windows. So-min walked beside him, carrying a bag full of papers and data tablets. She was his assistant, and had been, working with humans and aliens for 3 years now. Even she looked nervous as they walked through the long hallways toward the council chambers. "Remember," So-min said quietly, "we are the only ones who will speak with our voices today. All. The other species use their minds to talk to each other. They think our way is very old and simple." Hyunwoo nodded. He had read about this before coming here, but seeing it was different. They passed groups of aliens in the hallways, and none of them were making any sounds. Some looked like tall, thin people covered in silver metal. Others floated in glass, bubbles filled with green gas. A few looked like giant insects walking on their back legs, but all of them were completely silent. The council chambers were even more amazing than the rest of the station. The room was shaped like a giant bowl, with seats going up the sides in circles. The ceiling was made of the same glowing crystal as the walls, and Hyunwoo could see stars through it. In the center of the room was a platform where speakers would stand. 47 different alien species were already in their seats. Each group looked very different from the others. Some were very tall, some were very short, some had many arms, others had no arms at all. Some looked like they were made of rock, others looked like they were made of light, but they all had one thing in common: they were all completely quiet. Hyunwoo and So-min found their seats in the section marked for humans. They were the only 2 people there. Earth had sent a small group because they were still new to the Galactic Council. Most of the other species had been members for thousands of years. A very tall alien walked to the center platform. It looked like it was made of dark blue metal and had 6 arms. This was Prime Castellan Vorth, the leader of the council meetings. When it began to speak, Hyunwoo realized something strange. The alien's mouth did not move, but he could understand what it was saying. The words appeared in his mind, not in his ears. "Today we will discuss the mining rights for the Tau Ceti system," the words formed in Hyunwoo's head. "Each species will present their position." What happened next made Hyunwoo feel very uncomfortable. One by one, the alien species gave their presentations, but none of them spoke out loud. Instead, information just appeared on screens around the room. Charts and numbers and long lists of data showed up, but no one said anything. No one asked questions. No one argued or disagreed. The silver aliens who looked like tall people went first. Data about their mining technology filled the screens. Then the floating aliens in the green gas bubbles had their turn. More data appeared, this time about safety procedures. After them came the rock-like aliens, the light beings, the insect people, and many others. Each presentation was perfect. Each one had all the right information. Each one followed the same format. But to Hyunwoo, it felt like watching machines talk to other machines. There was no feeling, no passion, no real discussion. So-min leaned over and whispered, "This is how they always do it. Everything is planned ahead of time. No surprises, no arguments, no new ideas during the meeting." Hyunwoo watched as species after species shared their data in the same boring way. He noticed that some aliens actually moved away when he and So-min whispered to each other. Their voices seemed to bother the other beings in the room. After 2, Hours of silent data sharing, Prime Castellan Vorth called on the humans. Hyun-woo stood up and walked to the center platform. All the aliens turned to look at him. Some of them seemed nervous. Others looked curious. A few looked angry. Hyun-woo cleared his throat and began to speak out loud. His voice echoed in the huge chamber. Thank you for letting Earth join this discussion. We have some ideas about the Tau Ceti mining project that we think could help everyone. The moment he started talking, strange things happened around the room. Some aliens covered what looked like their ears. Others started flashing different colors. A few made beeping sounds. The silver aliens actually stood up and moved further away from him. But Hyun-woo kept talking. He explained Earth's ideas about sharing the mining work between different species. He talked about how humans could work with others to make the project better for everyone. He asked questions about things he did not understand. He suggested changes to some of the plans he had seen. As he spoke, he realized that he was doing something that had not happened in this room for a very long time. He was having a real conversation. He was thinking out loud. He was changing his ideas as he talked. He was being human. When he finished, the room was completely silent for a long time. Prime Castellan Vorth looked confused. Finally, words appeared. In Hyun-woo's mind again. Your vocal presentation will be processed through proper channels. Hyun-woo walked back to his seat feeling strange. He had just given what he thought was a good presentation, but all the aliens acted like he had done something wrong. So-min looked worried. What did I do wrong? He asked her quietly. Nothing, she whispered back. That's the problem. You did everything right, but in a way they have forgotten how to do. As the meeting continued with more silent data sharing, Hyun-woo began to understand something important. In this room full of advanced alien species, he and So-min were the only ones who could still speak freely. They were the only ones who could think out loud, ask questions, and change their minds. For the first time in his life, Hyun-woo realized that being human might be more special than he had ever imagined. 3 days had passed since the first council meeting, and Hyun-woo was getting more confused about how things worked in the galaxy. Every day he watched aliens share information without ever really talking to each other. Every day he felt more like an outsider. Kyujin arrived on a fast ship from Earth that morning. He was from the Human Economic Division and looked very worried when he met with Hyun-woo and So-min in their small rooms on the station. We have a big problem, Kyujin said as soon as the door closed. Earth's request to work with other species on new colonies has been rejected, but not because our ideas were bad. They rejected it because we used our voices to present it instead of sending the information through their computer networks. So-min put down her cup of coffee. That doesn't make sense. Why does it matter how we give them information? Kyujin pulled out a data tablet and showed them an official message from the council. According to this, all formal proposals must be submitted through what they call proper neural channels. Speaking out loud is considered primitive and potentially dangerous. Hyun-woo felt angry. Dangerous? How is talking dangerous? That's what I want to find out, So-min said. She had been spending her free time in the station's library, reading about galactic history. I think I found something important yesterday. She led them to her computer and showed them old records from the council's files. About 2,000 years ago, there was something called the War of Discordant Voices. 2 big alien groups got into a huge fight because they misunderstood each other during peace talks. The record showed pictures of destroyed planets and burning space stations. Millions of beings had died in the war. It lasted for 50 years and nearly broke apart the early galactic community. After the war ended, So Min continued, all the species signed something called the Great Silence Accords. They decided that talking out loud was too dangerous, too many chances for misunderstandings. So they created a new system. Q Jin read from the files. All communication between species must be filtered through artificial intelligence. All emotions must be removed. All responses must be calculated ahead of time. No surprises, no arguments, no confusion. Hyunwoo stared at the screen. They gave up talking to prevent war? It gets worse, So Min said. Look at this part. Humans joined the council just before these accords were fully put in place. We were grandfathered in, which means the rules don't apply to us the same way. But most aliens now think our way of talking is old-fashioned and risky. That afternoon, Hyunwoo met with Tae-hyung, another human who worked for the Cultural Affairs Department. Tae-hyung had been working with aliens for 10 years and knew more about council politics than anyone else from Earth. They met in a small restaurant on the station that served food from many different worlds. Tae-hyung ordered something that looked like blue soup, while Hyunwoo stuck with a sandwich that reminded him of home. The truth is, Tae-hyung said quietly, Earth's government is thinking about changing how we do things. They want us to fit in better with the other species. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. Tae-hyung looked around to make sure no one was listening. They want us to get neural implants, devices in our brains that would let us communicate the same way the aliens do. No more talking out loud, no more emotions in our presentations. Everything filtered and calculated. Hyunwoo nearly choked on his sandwich. They want to change how humans think? They say it's necessary if we want to be accepted in galactic society. The other species don't trust us because we're unpredictable. We say things without thinking them through first. We change our minds in the middle of conversations. We show emotions when we talk. But those are good things, Hyunwoo said. That's how we solve problems and come up with new ideas. Tae-hyung nodded sadly. I know. But try explaining that to aliens who haven't had a new idea in 1,000 years. That evening, So Min made another discovery. She had been analyzing the communication patterns of different species and found something strange in the data. Look at this, she said, showing Hyunwoo charts on her computer. I compared how much scientific progress each species made before and after the Great Silence Accords. The numbers were shocking. Before the Accords, when species could talk freely to each other, they made incredible discoveries almost every year. New technologies, new medicines, new ways to travel between stars. But after they stopped talking and started using the filtered communication systems, progress almost stopped. It's like the galaxy went to sleep, So Min said. For 2,000 years, they've been sharing the same ideas over and over again. No arguments, no disagreements, no new ways of thinking. Hyunwoo studied the charts. What about us? What about humans? We're different. In the 30 years since we joined the Council, humans have contributed more new ideas than some species have in centuries. But we're also the only ones who still talk freely. The next day, Hyunwoo tried to bring up these findings in the council meeting. He stood at the center platform and began to speak about the connection between free speech and innovation. But before he could finish, several aliens stood up to object. Prime Castellanvorth's words appeared in his mind. Human vocal patterns are disrupting proper communication protocols. Please submit your concerns through official channels. An alien that looked like a giant crystal spoke through the mental network. Unfiltered speech creates chaos. Chaos leads to conflict. We cannot allow this. Another alien, this one covered in fur and floating in a bubble of water, added, "The human delegation must follow established procedures or face sanctions." Hyun-woo looked around the room at all the silent faces staring at him. These beings had incredible technology and vast knowledge, but they had forgotten how to really talk to each other. They had traded their voices for safety, and in doing so, they had stopped growing as a civilization. As he walked back to his seat, Hyun-woo realized something important. The other species didn't see human speech as a gift. They saw it as a threat. They had built their entire society around the idea that talking freely was dangerous, and now humans were the only ones left who remembered what they had lost. That night, as Hyun-woo looked out at the stars through his room's window, he wondered if humanity would give up their voices too. Would they accept the neural implants and join the Great Silence? Or would they find a way to show the galaxy what they were missing? The answer, he knew, would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of every thinking being in the galaxy. Dr. Haewon had always been good with languages. On Earth, she could speak 7 different human languages and understand 3 more. But alien languages were much harder. She had been studying them for months, trying to understand how the different species really communicated with each other. She worked in a small lab deep inside the space station, surrounded by computers and translation devices. Most days she worked alone, but today Bo-Ra was helping her. Bo-Ra was an engineer who knew more about the station's computer systems than almost anyone. "I found something strange," Haewon said, pointing at the screens around them. "Look at these communication patterns from the council meetings." Bo-Ra looked at the data flowing across the monitors. It showed how information moved between different alien species during their silent conversations. "What am I supposed to see?" "Watch this," Haewon said. She played a recording of yesterday's council session, but instead of showing what the aliens said, it showed how their thoughts moved through the computer networks. "See those little pauses and these repeated patterns?" Bo-Ra studied the data more carefully. "It looks like something is controlling what they think before they think it." "Exactly." Haewon pulled up more files. "I've been analyzing the AI systems that filter their communications. The Great Silence Accords didn't just prevent war. They prevented change." She showed Bo-Ra the hidden programs running inside the neural networks. These programs didn't just remove emotions from alien communications. They also removed new ideas, creative thoughts, and anything that might challenge the way things had always been done. The AI mediators have been slowly pushing the galaxy toward staying the same, Haewon explained. "Any thought that might lead to change gets filtered out before it reaches other minds." Bo-Ra looked shocked. "So they're not just unable to argue with each other, they're unable to think of new things?" "Right. And it's been getting worse over time. The AIs have learned to recognize and remove more and more types of creative thinking. That afternoon, Haewon and Bo-Ra brought their discovery to Hyun-woo and So-min. They met in a storage room where they could talk freely without being overheard by the station's monitoring systems. "This explains everything," So-min said after hearing their report. "No wonder the galaxy stopped making progress. No wonder they're afraid of human speech. We're the only ones whose thoughts aren't being controlled." Hyun-woo felt sick. "How many species know about this?" "I don't think any of them do," Haewon said. "The changes happened so slowly that no one noticed. After 2,000 years, they probably think this is just how thinking works. But their problems were getting bigger. Young-ho, a captain from the Human Defense Team, came to find them with bad news. Several alien species are talking about punishing Earth," he told them. They want to force us to use their communication systems or kick us out of the council completely. On what grounds? Hyun-woo asked. They say our speech patterns are disruptive to galactic peace. Some of them are calling us a security risk. So-min laughed, but not because anything was funny. A security risk because we can think freely? It gets worse, Young-ho continued. The crystalline assembly and the hive worlds are working together to create new rules that would require all council members to use neural filters. If the vote passes, humans would have to choose between leaving the council or giving up our voices. That evening, Hyun-woo couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty corridors of the space station, thinking about what they had learned. The galaxy was trapped in a system that prevented growth, innovation, and real communication. And now the few beings who could still think freely were being seen as the problem. He found himself in the station's observation deck looking out at the stars. Millions of worlds were out there, home to billions of thinking beings. But if Hae-won was right, most of those beings had lost the ability to truly think for themselves. So-min found him there an hour later. Can't sleep either, I keep thinking. About what we should do, Hyun-woo said. If we fight this, we might lose everything. Earth might be kicked out of the council. But if we don't fight, we might lose something even more important, our humanity, So-min said quietly. The next day, So-min made another important discovery in the council's historical archives. She had been looking for records from before the Great Silence Accords, trying to understand what the galaxy had been, like when species could speak freely. Look at this, she said, showing Hyun-woo data on her tablet. Before the Accords, the galaxy was amazing. Different species were constantly sharing new ideas, creating new technologies, solving problems together. The period from 2,500 to 2,000 years ago was called the Golden Age of Innovation. The records showed incredible achievements, faster-than-light travel, cures for diseases that affected multiple species, art that combined the best of dozens of different cultures, and diplomatic solutions to conflicts that seemed impossible to solve. But here's the really important part, So-min continued. Look at how they solved the conflicts that did arise. They talked through them. They argued, they disagreed, they got emotional, and then they found solutions that no one had thought of before. So the war of discordant voices wasn't caused by free speech, Hyun-woo realized. It was just one war among many conflicts that usually got solved through discussion. Exactly. But that one war scared everyone so much that they threw away the very thing that had made their civilization great. In the afternoon council session, the tension was worse than ever. Prime Castellan Vorth announced that a formal vote would be held on new communication requirements. Every species would have to decide whether to force humans to use neural filters or remove them from the council. Hyun-woo knew this might be his last chance to speak freely in the chamber. He stood up and walked to the center platform, feeling the weight of every alien gaze upon him. I know you think our voices are dangerous, he began, his words echoing in the crystal dome. I know you believe that free speech leads to conflict and chaos. But I want to tell you what we've learned about your own history. He talked about the golden age of innovation. He explained how the galaxy had once been a place of incredible creativity and growth. He described the discoveries and achievements that had happened when species could truly communicate with each other. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few began to flash different colors. But others seemed to be listening, really listening, for the first time in years. You didn't just give up the right to speak freely, Hyun-woo continued. You gave up the right to think freely, and in doing so, you stopped growing as a civilization. When he finished, the chamber was silent for a long time. But this silence felt different. It wasn't the empty silence of controlled minds. It was the silence of beings who were beginning to remember what they had lost. Prime Castellan Vorth's words appeared in his mind. The human presentation will be considered. But as Hyun-woo walked back to his seat, he noticed something new. A few aliens were looking at each other differently. Some were moving their mouths as if trying to remember how to speak. Others were touching their heads where the neural implants connected to their brains. For the first time since arriving at the station, Hyun-woo felt a small spark of hope. The emergency alarms woke everyone on the station at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed in the corridors as automated voices announced "Priority Alert" in dozens of languages. Hyun-woo jumped out of bed and ran to the command center, still wearing his sleeping clothes. The main screen showed a terrifying sight. Hundreds of black ships were attacking the outer rim of the galaxy. They moved in patterns unlike anything the Council had ever seen, fast, unpredictable, and deadly. 3 star systems had already gone dark. Admiral Jin-woo from the Human Defense Fleet was already at the command center when Hyun-woo arrived. He looked grim as he studied the tactical displays. "Who are they?" Hyun-woo asked. "The Void Raiders," Jin-woo replied. "We've heard stories about them, but no one thought they were real. They come from outside our galaxy, and they don't follow any rules we understand." So Min and the other humans gathered around the displays. The attacking ships seemed to change direction without warning, appeared and disappeared from sensors, and used weapons that the Council's computers couldn't identify. Prime Castellan Vorth appeared on the main screen, speaking through the neural network to all species at once. "Emergency protocols are now active. All defense fleets will coordinate through the Central Command Network." But something was wrong. The Council's standard response to threats involved careful planning through their AI systems. Every move had to be calculated and approved before any action could be taken. This process usually took hours or even days. The Void Raiders were destroying entire worlds in minutes. "Request permission to coordinate fleet movements," Jin-woo said to the Council command. "All requests must be processed through proper channels," came the reply through the neural network. Jin-woo stared at the screen in disbelief. "Proper channels? There won't be anything left to defend if we wait for your computers to make decisions." While the Council's systems slowly processed tactical information, the Void Raiders destroyed 2 more star systems. Millions of beings died while the galaxy's defenders waited for permission to help them. Hyun-woo watched the disaster unfold and realized something terrible. The same AI systems that had kept the galaxy peaceful for 2,000 years were now preventing them from defending themselves. The neural networks that filtered all communication were too slow and rigid to deal with a real crisis. "We need to bypass their systems," Jin-woo said to the other humans. "We need to coordinate the defense ourselves." "They'll never allow that," So-min said. "The Council has never let anyone act without approval from the central computers." "Then we'll have to convince them," Hyun-woo said. He ran to the Council chambers, which were in chaos. Aliens who had been calm and controlled for centuries were panicking as their perfect systems failed to protect them. Some were flashing bright colors. Others were making high-pitched sounds. A few were actually trying to speak out loud, but they had forgotten how. Prime Castellan Vorth stood at the center platform, but for the first time since Hyun-woo had met him, the alien leader looked lost. The neural networks were overloaded with information, and no clear decisions were coming through. "Let us help," Hyun-woo said, walking to the platform. Humans cannot be given command authority, Vorth replied through the mental link. Protocols forbid it. Your protocols are getting people killed, Hyun-woo shouted. Look at your screens. While you're waiting for computers to make decisions, entire worlds are burning. On the tactical displays, another star system went dark. The Void Raiders were moving faster than the Council's systems could track them. Mi Young, a lieutenant colonel from the human military, stepped forward. Admiral Jin-woo has a plan that could save millions of lives, but he needs to coordinate with your fleets directly, without going through the computer networks. Impossible, came voices from several alien species through the neural link. Direct coordination violates all safety protocols. Then your safety protocols are wrong, Hyun-woo said. He looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces. You've spent so long afraid of making mistakes that you've forgotten how to act when action is needed. Dr. Haewon's voice came over the communication system. She had been analyzing the Void Raiders' attack patterns from her lab. I know why our normal systems aren't working, she announced. The Raiders are using something I'm calling quantum linguistic warfare. Her voice filled the chamber as she explained her discovery. Their weapons don't just attack ships and planets. They attack communication networks. They specifically target the neural links and AI systems that the Council uses. Every time you try to coordinate through your computers, they corrupt the signals and turn your own systems against you. The implications were devastating. The Void Raiders weren't just random attackers. They were targeting the galaxy's greatest weakness. They had studied the Council's dependence on controlled communication and built their entire strategy around exploiting it. The only way to fight them, Haewon continued, is through communications they can't predict or corrupt. Random, chaotic, emotional communications, the kind that humans use. A few aliens in the chamber began to understand. Sub-Coordinator Vex High of the Nebula Collective did something unprecedented. He disconnected his neural implant and tried to speak out loud. Can you really help us? He asked, his voice scratchy from centuries of disuse. Yes, Hyun-woo said, but you have to trust us. You have to let us communicate the way humans do, with voices, with arguments, with quick decisions and changed minds. More aliens began to disconnect from the neural networks. Some looked terrified without their mental filters. Others seemed relieved to think their own thoughts again. Prime Castellan Vorth hesitated for a long moment. The tactical displays showed the Void Raiders getting closer to the galaxy's core worlds. Billions of lives hung in the balance. What do you need? Vorth asked, and for the first time, his voice came through sound waves instead of the neural link. Admiral Jin-woo took charge immediately. I need direct communication with all fleet commanders. No computers, no filters, just voice-to-voice contact. Mi Young will coordinate with your captains. We'll need to make decisions fast and change tactics constantly. But what if we make mistakes? Asked an alien from the Crystal Assembly. We will make mistakes, Jin-woo said, but we'll fix them quickly and learn from them. That's how real fighting works. The next few hours were unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 2,000 years. Human officers worked alongside alien crews who were speaking out loud for the first time in their lives. Voices filled the communication channels, some uncertain, some excited, some afraid, but all alive with real thought and feeling. The defense of the galaxy became a massive, chaotic conversation. Captains argued about tactics, changed their minds mid-battle, and came up with new strategies on the spot. It was messy and unpredictable and sometimes confusing, but it worked. The Void Raiders, who had built their attack around the galaxy's rigid communication systems, found themselves facing something they couldn't understand or corrupt: the defense. Fleets moved in patterns that couldn't be calculated because they were being created in real time by thinking beings who were free to disagree with each other. As the first Void Raider ship was destroyed by the new tactics, a cheer went up across the communication channels. It was raw, emotional, and completely unfiltered. It was the sound of a galaxy remembering how to be alive. But the battle was far from over. The real test would come when the Void Raiders realized that their main advantage was gone and began to adapt their own tactics. The question was whether the galaxy's defenders could continue to outthink an enemy who had been studying them for years. The answer would depend on something the Council had almost forgotten: the power of minds that were free to think, speak, and disagree with each other. The final battle lasted 18 hours. Commander Dongjun led a mixed fleet of human and alien ships through the most chaotic space fight in galactic history. The communication channels buzzed with voices in dozens of languages, all talking, at once, all working together. "3 enemy ships coming from the left," shouted Captain Sulgi from her human cruiser. "I see them," replied a Velthari pilot whose voice was shaky but determined. "My weapons are ready." "Wait," called out an alien from the crystal assembly. "I have a better idea. What if we—" And that was how it went for 18 hours. Ideas flying back and forth, plans changing in mid-sentence, arguments that led to breakthroughs. The Void Raiders, who had expected to face the galaxy's slow, predictable defense systems, instead found themselves fighting an enemy that never did the same thing, twice. Engineer Ji-hoon worked with a team of Velthari technicians in the ship's engine room. These aliens had not spoken out loud in over 1,000 years, but now they were chattering excitedly as they invented new ways to make their ships faster and stronger. "What if we combine your energy systems with our power cores?" Ji-hoon suggested. "Yes, and we could modify the—" The Velthari engineer paused, struggling with unfamiliar words. "The boost thing?" "The thrust enhancer?" Ji-hoon offered. "Yes, that." Their combined voices created solutions that neither species could have found alone. Human creativity mixed with alien knowledge produced technologies that surprised even their creators. The turning point came when Dr. Haiwan figured out how to disrupt the Void Raiders' own communication systems. She had been studying their quantum linguistic weapons and found a weakness. They used the same kind of rigid communication patterns they were designed to exploit, she announced over the fleet channels. "If we can create enough chaos in our own signals, we can confuse their systems and make them attack each other." "How do we create chaos?" asked Admiral Jin Woo. "Easy," So Min replied with a laugh. "We do what humans do best. We all talk at once, about different things." And that's exactly what they did. Hundreds of ships began broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously. Humans told jokes. Aliens shared poetry they had written centuries ago. Someone started singing, and others began arguing about the best way to cook space fish. The Void Raiders' systems, designed to process orderly information, couldn't handle the beautiful mess of free communication. Their quantum linguistic weapons began targeting their own ships, thinking the chaos was coming from enemy sources. Within an hour, the invasion fleet was in complete disarray. Many Void Raider ships had been destroyed by their own weapons. The survivors retreated to whatever dark space they had come from. The galaxy was safe. In the days that followed, everything changed. The council chambers that had been silent for 2,000 years now echoed with voices. Species that had forgotten how to speak were relearning the joy of conversation. Arguments broke out constantly, but so did laughter, and new ideas, and unexpected friendships. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some aliens tried to return to the old neural networks, saying that free speech was too chaotic and dangerous. But many others discovered that they had missed thinking for themselves more than they had realized. Prime Castellan Vorth called a special session to decide the future of galactic communication. The chamber was louder than it had been in millennia, as different species debated the issue. "The old system kept us safe," argued a representative from the Hive worlds. "Safe from what?" replied a young alien from the Nebula Collective. "Safe from growth? Safe from new ideas? Safe from being alive?" Hyun Woo stood to address the assembly. 6 months ago, his voice had been the only one echoing in this chamber. Now, it was just one voice among hundreds. "I propose something new," he said. "Not a return to the old silence, and not complete chaos either. Something we could call the harmony of voices." He explained his idea. The neural networks would still be available for species that preferred them, but they would no longer be required. Emotions would be allowed in official discussions. Arguments would be encouraged as a way to find better solutions. Most importantly, no idea would be filtered out just because it was new or challenging. "Diversity of thought," Hyun-Woo said, "is the engine that drives progress. If we all think the same way, we stop growing. If we all agree with each other, we stop learning." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. There were heated arguments, passionate speeches, and moments when it seemed like the old conflicts might return. But something interesting happened. Each time a disagreement arose, someone found a way to turn it into a new solution. By the end, most species had voted to adopt the harmony of voices protocols. A few chose to keep using their neural networks, and that was accepted too. The new system celebrated differences instead of trying to eliminate them. So Min wrote the final report on humanity's role in the transformation. She noted that technological advancement had accelerated faster in 6 months than in the previous 2 centuries. Breakthrough discoveries were emerging from the intersection of different ways of thinking and communicating. New art forms were being created by mixing the styles of different species. Scientific problems that had been unsolved for generations were being cracked by teams that combined logical alien thinking with human intuition. Even conflicts between species were being resolved more quickly because everyone could express their real feelings instead of hiding them behind filters. The most important change was in the council chambers themselves. Each session now began with something called the Human Minute, a time when all species were encouraged to speak their thoughts aloud, unfiltered and unafraid. It honored the beings who had never forgotten how to use their voices. During one of these sessions, an elderly alien from the crystalline assembly stood up. Her voice was weak but clear as she spoke for the first time in 800 years. "I remember," she said, "what it was like before the silence. I was young then, and we used to have such wonderful arguments about everything. We would get angry and excited and passionate about ideas. And those arguments led to the greatest discoveries of my lifetime." She paused, her crystal form glowing brighter as she continued. "I thought we had gained peace when we gave up our voices. But I now understand that we had only gained the silence of the grave. These humans, they reminded us what it means to be truly alive." The chamber filled with the sound of agreement, not the synchronized mental responses of the old system, but the genuine, chaotic, beautiful noise of hundreds of different beings expressing their thoughts in their own ways. Hyunwoo looked around the chamber and smiled. He thought about how the title of their story had come true, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humans weren't granted the right to speak freely as a privilege. They had preserved it as a gift for the entire galaxy. The silence was broken. The galaxy was talking again. And in all that wonderful noise, the future was being born, one conversation at a time. As he walked out of the chamber that day, Hyunwoo heard something that filled his heart with joy. The sound of alien children playing in the station's corridors, their young voices mixing with human children's laughter as they invented new games together. They were the first generation in 2,000 years who would grow up knowing that their voices mattered, that their thoughts were their own, and that the right to speak freely was the most precious gift any thinking being could possess. The galaxy had found its voice again, and it was beautiful.